Welcome, everyone. Just take a few minutes to give people time to log in.
And while you're joining us, feel free to drop in the chat under everyone. You'll see a couple of talking points there, the chat and the Q&A. And if you just select everyone, you can just let us know where you're joining us from on this sunny summer day, or maybe it's raining where you're at.
It's very sunny where I'm from right now. I'm looking outside my window and not a cloud in the sky.
Tennessee, New Mexico, Massachusetts. Nice. Welcome. We're excited to have you with us today.
What do you say, Sarah? A couple more seconds?
Yeah. Oh, South Carolina. It's on a bucket list of mine.
I know.
Yeah.
Always wanted.
Yeah. I think we're ready. Whenever you're ready to kick us off. Welcome, everyone.
Excellent. So we're absolutely thrilled that you've taken time out of your day to join us today. Just a few housekeeping rules. This session will be recorded. You will be receiving an email with a link to the recording after this event. So feel free to ask our presenters questions using the Q&A option below our screen. We'd be happy to answer some questions at the end of our presentation. And of course, if you would like access to closed captioning, please hit the closed caption button in the bottom tray. All right, why don't I go ahead and kick us off? So I'd like to welcome you to our Using Stimulus Funds to Get Students Back on Track in Reading webinar. We're excited to have you here. My name is Albania, and I'm part of our marketing team here. We have our amazing speakers ready to share some helpful insights. Sarah McCarty, our Director of Literacy and Math on the Assessment and Intervention team here at Amplify. We also have Christian Sciacca, Associate Director of Government Relations. Last, but certainly not least, we have Megan Maubert helping us in the chat and Q&A. So without further delay, let's welcome Sarah McCarty.
Wonderful. So Christian and I are very excited to get us going today. And before we start, we just want to hear from you. We heard where you're coming from and joining us from today, but what is your role within your school or district? Teacher, principal, district administrator? Let us know in the chat what your role is. Letters, facilitator, interventionist for literacy. Thank you so much for sharing. That's a big role. Another intervention specialist from Tim. Thank you. Teacher curriculum director, Pauline. Yeah, very important roles there within education. Today, as you continue on sharing, today I just want to share, here's our flow for our 1 hour time together. We're gonna first, Christian's gonna share out what's happening with stimulus funds for schools and districts. And then 2 supported programs that are allowable expenses for that funding are mCLASS intervention and Amplify reading. And I'll take you through both of those. And we'll open it up at the end for a Q&A time where we're here, hop off if you need to hop off, but we're here to help answer those specific questions of how to apply for those fundings, what's more information for the state that I live in, so that Christian and I can get you that information. And so without further ado, Christian, let's turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Sarah and Albania. So yeah, welcome everyone. So happy that you're here to learn more about this truly historic opportunity that we have. So the big headline that we want to share when it comes to stimulus funds is this is an absolutely massive historic investment that's happening in K-12 education. this is something that is rare. It's something that's going to give us the chance over the next few years to really make sure that our kids are back on track, to really make sure our kids have the best opportunity to learn to read and to thrive. And this is just something, such a great opportunity that we really don't want to let to go to waste. So with that headline, we're going to turn to some of the specifics. So just an overview of the three different buckets of stimulus funds. The first one was ESSER 1 through the CARES Act in March of 2020. That was $13 billion for K-12 education. The yellow bubble happened in December of 2020. That was the CRRSA, and that was ESSER 2. So that was $54 billion. Most recent is that huge blue bubble, $122 billion for K-12 education through the American Rescue Plan in ESSER 3 funds. So what's really important to know is that these were designed not only to support the immediate needs of schools and of students and of communities, but also to make sure that we're preparing and planning long-term for what kids and districts and educators all need. We also wanted to highlight how much money is still out there. So starting on the left column here where it says ESSER 1 in the CARES Act. So 90.4% of those funds, or the average state has spent 90.4% of their funds. So most of those funds are gone. But if you look at that middle column for ESSER 2, not even 40% is the average amount. And the highest state in Arkansas hasn't even spent 3/4 of it. So there's still a tremendous amount that just has not been spent for ESSER 2. But I think the real highlight that we want to turn to is that final column for ESSER 3. So 6.3% is the average amount that a state has spent of their ESSER 3 dollars. And remember, that is the biggest by far bucket of funds. As you can see, Sarah has her cursor where it says $122 billion total. About 6.7 billion of that has been spent. So bottom line, when it comes to these funds, around $150 billion of ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funds have not been spent, which is truly staggering to think about how much money is still available for K-12 districts to spend. So we want to do a quick 101 on these funds, some just basic logistics for ESSER 3. So as some of you might know, funds must be what's called obligated by September 30th, 2024. And obligated just means assigned to a spending category. So assigned to PPE or sanitation or curriculum or assessment or intervention programming. Obligated just means assigned to something. After that, SEAs or state education agencies, our DOEs, can request an 18-month extension from the US Department of Education for what's called liquidate funds. So liquidate means to pay the vendor that they're contracting with. So what does all of that kind of weird language mean when it comes to mCLASS intervention and Amplify reading that Sarah is going to be taking us through in just a couple of minutes? So what this means is that districts have the ability to purchase multi-year licenses for products using these funds, and they can continue to use those funds after the deadlines, as long as those have those licenses. And this comes directly from US Department of Education guidance. So we quoted at the bottom there, you can see, and that last bullet is really important. So although funds must be obligated by September 30th, 2024, grant activities carried out through a valid obligation of funds may continue beyond that date. So what does that mean? As long as you obligate funds by the September 30th deadline, as long as you follow the deadlines within the law, you are totally allowed to continue the activities past that date. So you could purchase a multi-year license for a piece of software in 2022 or 2023, and you could continue to use it through 2025, 2026, however long that, that license was for. So we've gone over kind of how much money is left. We've gone over kind of some basic logistics, some 101. And now we want to talk about what is the funding, what can the funding be spent on? And the term that the legislation uses is called an allowable expense. So the American Rescue Plan lists 16 different allowable expenses. we've highlighted 6 that our products and services fall under. So we just want to quickly go through those 6. So starting in the top left, and these are numbered by where they are in the list of 16 in the legislation. That's why the numbering might look a little wonky there. So number 2 is any activity that would support a federal program like ESEA or various title funding, totally allowable use. Number 4 is any activity to address the unique needs of at-risk students is a totally allowable use. So getting really personalized with what individual kiddos might need coming after these past couple of years. So number 9 is ed tech software to support both online learning, but also hybrid learning and in-person learning. So to support learning, ed tech software. Moving to the bottom row, number 11, summer learning and after-school programs for at-risk and minority students. And this would include instructional materials that you might use in a summer or an after-school activity. You sometimes might see the acronym ELO or extended learning opportunities for those types of experiences. Allowable use number 12 is addressing learning loss among at-risk students. This is a really important one. So when they say addressing learning loss, they're talking about a couple of different things. This could be assessment, this could be supplemental instructional programming, this could be core instructional programming, this could be intervention programming. But what's also really important here is the American Rescue Plan requires districts spend at least 20% of their allocation on addressing learning loss. So this is a huge priority for both the federal government and, as we're going to see on the next slide, actually, states. Can you go back one? I'm so sorry, Sarah.
Yeah, that's okay.
And then the last one, I just want to emphasize, this was their catch-all. They said activities that are necessary to maintain the operation and continuity of LEAs. So anything that an individual district, an individual principal, an individual admin might think is going to be useful for them to make sure their district continues to run. And that really emphasizes what the US DOE wanted here, which was total flexibility. They wanted to make sure that individual districts had the ability to do what they wanted with these funds. So, like I just said, it's not only that the US Department of Education wants this information or wants to focus on learning loss, states do too. So almost all 50 states, 46 of them in fact, list accelerating learning or making up for lost learning or some other similar phrase as one of their top priorities in their ESSER plan. We've reviewed all 50 of them. And then actually getting into some of the products that Sarah is going to be talking about, 17 states plus DC explicitly mention the science of reading in their plans, whether it is something that they're interested in, something that they're going to spend money on as a state, something that they're going to provide guidance for their district. So both mCLASS intervention and Amplify reading are not only allowable uses, but they align with state funding priorities. So just quickly to summarize here, you can go to our stimulus hub where you can find a lot of the similar information, a lot more information on the products as well, and you have the ability to ask us questions or request more information. So now that I've gone over kind of the information about stimulus funding, Sarah is going to take us through those 2 wonderful programs.
Yeah, thanks so much, Christian. So many allowable expenses. And I'm very honored to be here today to showcase 2 of those programs that do fit as allowable expenses to close those gaps for those at-risk students to get them up to reading on grade level. And so the first thing I want to talk about is it's 2 things actually. Throughout this time, if you have questions about what you see, do use that chat or the Q&A. Megan and Albania are there to help. And Albania just dropped that link to that hub that Christian just showcased, so that if you want to dive in more for your state or have questions that we can support you with, do utilize that URL. So mCLASS intervention. Gosh, let's think about intervention itself. And just to kind of get us kicked off here, I want to hear from you as interventionists, as curriculum directors, or even teachers joining us today. Some of you did drop in that you are a teacher, all superheroes, as Megan shared. What is the biggest challenge that we face with teachers and interventionists with planning and delivering intervention? So I just want to hear from you by using that drop down in the chat. Some top challenges. All right, so as you drop those in there, I'm gonna just kind of push forward a little bit just for the sake of time. mCLASS intervention, the first program to talk about that is an allowable expense that focuses on students to get those struggling students up to par, is a targeted staff-led small group instruction for those struggling students all the way from K through grade 6 that provides educators with fully scoped and sequenced lesson plans. And so some of you may have thought about like lesson plan creation is a challenge when I'm thinking about my intervention time with my students. And so with mCLASS intervention, you don't have to worry about that pain point. It will provide those fully scoped and sequenced lessons for the students. And so you're going to hear me talk about heavy lifting. mCLASS itself will do a lot of heavy lifting for educators, everything from the ease of collecting assessment data all the way through generating lesson plans. And so there is a 10-day cycle that mCLASS intervention is built on the foundation of. And so first, teachers are going to collect assessment data using DIBELS 8 and diagnostic assessment measures for the students that are going to receive additional instruction outside the core. And so once teachers collect that data, there's a built-in algorithm that does that lifting, that hard time-consuming component that we all spend hours doing as teachers. They can get back their time. So what will the algorithm do? It will first, thinking about this, it will first look at the assessment data and analyze at the student level. It will update the student profile and what the student can and cannot do. It will also note to the teacher what are the 2 most critical literacy skills that the child needs to focus on. It will then look at all the students, whether they were all your students, whether you tell it to look within grade or within a multi-grade level, and it will look for groups of like students who have the same 2 literacy skills that they need to focus on for instruction. Additionally, it will then generate lesson plans for each of those groups that are specific to their literacy skill needs. The teacher will then provide instruction to those students in that small group setting where students have many opportunities to practice. And then at the end of this 10-day cycle, the teacher will then progress monitor students, collect current data off of what they know. Profiles will be updated by the algorithm, and that teacher will then get 10 more days of customized instruction based off of what the students know at this time of year. And this cycle simply repeats every 10 days with mCLASS intervention, and so that heavy lifting can be completely managed by this program. And so let's take a look at some of that lifting when it comes to data analysis. Thank you, Pauline. I see that you said challenge of assessing and then selecting, the targeted program. What's best for the students? What literacy skills do they need? So this is where that heavy lifting really comes in, the time-consuming part of data analysis. I have 2 students here. The students have the exact same score, 28. They're both red on this particular assessment measure of phonics within DIBELS 8. And so as a teacher, it would be easy to just say 28, 28, red and red. I'm going to put these students in the same intervention group and they've received the same instruction. However, the algorithm of mCLASS intervention will look at the details that the student responded. And we can see on the student on the left, this child has errors with letter sound, and he is also segmenting. We don't see any blending. The child on the right, Karen, she has no errors. She is very fluid with her letter sound knowledge correspondence. She is accurate and she is blending. However, she's slow. She needs more automaticity. So these children actually have the same score, but they have different needs. And so this is where the power of the program can really embed that learning for students in order to provide them those targeted lessons based off of their needs. And so this is the mCLASS intervention continuum, where our lessons here start on the left with those basic skills, starting with phonological awareness. It will move through decoding and fluency and culminates to the far right with strong reading comprehension. This may look familiar to you if you're familiar with the Scarborough braid, the science of reading. It's just in a honeycomb format versus the rope or other visuals that you've seen. And so thinking about the lifting, The program will then, for the child on the left, it knows that he actually needs lessons and to be in a group that focus on letter sound knowledge, sounding out and blending, as we just noted from his data. And as he becomes more proficient, he'll be advanced to the far right with those additional literacy skills. And the student on the left, Karen, she's ready for regular words and irregular words with automaticity. So same score as we saw, but they have different needs. And so they'll be placed, your students will be placed into the grouping that fits their need in order to close those literacy gaps. And so you may be thinking, how does that grouping tool work? So let me take you through a visual of our mCLASS algorithm grouping tool. So let's imagine I'm a coordinator interventionist in my building. I'm only going to, in this case, group first grade students. So I've dropped all 4 first grade classes down here within the grouping tool that comes in intervention. So I have 45 students in 4 classes. All my students are listed right here in this, what I would call the hallway. I think about the number of staff I have to teach intervention. I simply select that and it will create groups. So I could have all 45 students grouped. But I want to differentiate and customize intervention groups. So I'm going to think about students at risk level. So in that case, I would come in here and uncheck my students who were at or above benchmark. And you can see some of those students in that hallway disappear. I think about my students with IEPs or English language learners. Are we including them or not including them? So you have choice in customizing your group. So now I've taken this first grade cohort down to 30 students. I think about the size of the number of students I want in each group. I select that. And again, I think about the number of staff that I have for the intervention grouping instructional time. Once I make those simple selections, the algorithm groups all my students based off of their 2 like literacy needs based off of the data. So in this case, this first group, their hexagons are empty. They are for phonological awareness and letter sounds. So they're starting at the beginning of that literacy continuum to close those literacy gaps. And this first grade group on the far right is more advanced. They are all showing me based off of their data that they're ready for regular words and irregular words in that middle spectrum there on the continuum. Once my grouping is done, I like my groupings, I simply hit save. And now the program will do additional heavy lifting for me by creating my lessons. And so let's take a look at what that looks like. Here is a sample of a 10-day lesson plan that is fully scoped and sequenced for me. These are 30-minute time periods where I'm working with directly with my small group of students. It's focusing on the 2 literacy skills that this group has in common. It's going to provide me that 9 days worth of instruction already there for me. And on the 10th day, as the group leader, I would progress monitor my students to capture that new data, in which then the system will do the algorithm and provide me the next 10 days worth of customized instruction for my group. And just to kind of point out here with these activities within this 30-minute time frame, the first 2 lessons of every day, lessons A and B, focus on the first literacy skill. The next 2 lessons within that 30-minute time, C and D, focus on that second literacy skill. And E is always how we close out our instruction time together with an application in a game-like setting. And this will rotate between the first and second skill. So there's always that embedded practice. This is what I see at a very high level, takes that heavy lift off of teachers. So I also want to show you what does intervention look like in real time. So I'm going to just play a short snippet of 45 seconds or so of a video that we have captured. mCLASS intervention can be a pull-out or a push-in model. And in this video, it's going to be a pull-out just to kind of give you the setting of the video. But I want you to notice things like student engagement level. Where are the group leaders' lesson plans? And then think about the time that is given for students for thinking before they shoot, the leader will call on them. And so let me get this queued up for us. And while I do that, let me look over here in the chat, see if there's anything. Okay, we are good.
I would like you to find Sound Detectives is the picture that has all
Sound detectives.
good sound detective.
This is a middle segmentation activity.
He's a fuck dog. Great. Which sound has ah in it? Cat. Cat.
So I'm going to pause here. As you can see, this was an 8-minute video. I don't see any responses in the chat. I'm going to just kind of answer some of them, and maybe they'll come in as you're typing right now. But a couple things here to notice is the lesson plans. So these are all PDFs. I'm going to show you some snippets of them shortly. And in this case, the group leader is simply using the laptop and not printing the lesson plans and scrolling down. And so for those who are comfortable with technology, save paper, just simply teach from the lesson plan that's there on the computer. You may have noticed all those students were engaged. She called them sound detectives. I like that. That makes me miss the classroom. But she gave them time to think. Some students, we saw their hands shoot up right away. Other students took a couple more moments of thinking time. And so that pacing was spot on, but also time for students to think about their responses. So that was just a snippet of a middle sound segmentation lesson. One thing I also want to point out, you might have heard me say teacher, interventionist, group leader. mCLASS intervention can be taught by a certified educator, meaning teachers or interventionists. It is also, as you're going to see here with the lesson plans, fully scoped in sequence with this I-do model so that paraprofessionals, student teachers, volunteers can additionally easily teach intervention groups. So this is one snippet. This is the second activity on day 9. And this is a lower grade elementary example here with that middle sound segmentation. It actually flows off of that video we just watched. But I want to point out that the goal is listed, timing, we know pacing is important, is listed here. Any materials that are needed. mCLASS intervention comes with kits. You could also, if you're tech savvy as the intervention leader, utilize our digital materials as well. But all materials are listed here. This is our Mr. Say for that practice that the group leader is going to share with the students. And then while the students are doing that reinforcement of the literacy skill, supports are noted right here for the group leader. So if a student is struggling, we can step it down. We can meet them where they are. If a student is responding very quickly and is ready to be challenged on the spot, as the teacher, I can provide that challenge to the student. Additionally, I just wanted to showcase this is an upper grade lesson. Again, just one snippet of 5 within that 30-minute time frame on day 1 for an upper grade student. And the same structures are in place here. The goal, the pacing, any materials, our friend Mr. Say, and of course, those supports for the group leader. Okay, I was just checking our chat, seeing if there was any questions or comments yet. And so thinking about what Christian shared earlier, 20% of stimulus funding is to be allocated for our at-risk students and getting, filling in that unfinished learning time. And so mCLASS intervention has the evidence to support student learning. This is an external outcome of a study that was done in partnership with the University of Michigan, 14,000 students across 56 schools. Cohorts of students received mCLASS intervention. Another cohort of students received other intervention programs. And those students in grades K2 clearly outperformed those students that were in the control group. And so the evidence definitely shows that mCLASS intervention does close the literacy gap. And so I just wanted to pause right there and see if there are any questions yet about intervention before I push forward. Okay, I'm not seeing anything initially, Megan, Albania. If you do, you'll cover them. And so we just spent some time talking about that in direct instruction for discrete targeted literacy skills. I want to spend a moment talking about personalized learning for students for millions of reasons, right? Students can utilize additional practice with literacy skills and literacy skills that are connected with text. And so I want to introduce to you Amplify reading. It is an additional component. It is differentiated. It is digital instruction for all students that is very personalized and engaging. Students enter Amplify reading in their, I would say, age appropriate world, and all the peers in that same grade are in that same world, but it's being personalized and adaptive as they make responses to the questions of the learning that they're receiving through this digital platform. And so thinking back about this 10-day cycle, think about Amplify Reading as that personalized learning instruction for all my students within literacy. It is a consistent engine that can provide that support for them. So imagine I'm going to be a first grade teacher. I was once a teacher. And so I'm providing direct instruction with mCLASS intervention right here in the corner of my classroom with 4 to 6 students. One of the challenges is like, what are the rest of my students doing? And I can kind of say that with, in a laughing manner. Classroom management for sure is a huge topic. But I can rest assured as a teacher that the rest of my students are on Amplify Reading, getting the personalized learning. So leverage the technology teachers that we have in the classroom so that I can provide that direct instruction here. And the rest of my students are still getting literacy through the program. And just like mCLASS intervention, Amplify Reading was also externally verified. These are outcomes of K-5 students who spent 30 minutes a week. More time is encouraged, but even 30 minutes a week, we can see the power here that Amplify Reading reduced the risk for these students with difficulties. And so I just wanted to showcase this component as well. When thinking about ESSER funds, Christian, you can chat this or respond verbally, but evidence-based is definitely a component that's needed when you're selecting your programs. And so we can provide you with those evidence-based PDFs, efficacy studies for both of our programs that close the gaps here. So thinking about supporting students, we know we have representation from you today from a variety of states, that states have legislation regarding students with dyslexia or providing instruction for our most at-risk students. Both of these programs align with the IDA recommendations of the principles of effective instruction, along with the content that needs to be provided for the students. Additionally, we have supports for Spanish students, but emerging bilinguals, with whether it be a Spanish voiceover within Amplify Reading or providing cognites directions, translation stories in Spanish for mCLASS interventions. We definitely provide both of those supports in both of our programs. And so I see that we're at 35 minutes after the hour. I just want to start closing us out with just saying that here at Amplify, we want to provide every student the opportunity to thrive and finish that the missed learning opportunities through COVID or whatever those cases may be. And so both mCLASS intervention and Amplify Reading are proven literacy solutions that meet that need. And additionally, they can be covered by the stimulus funding. And as Christian shared, there's $122 billion of unused funding. So take this opportunity to tap into the programs that can help close those gaps for our students and get them back on track with reading. Christian, anything you'd want to add here about stimulus funding and these two particular programs that meet those I think the word is allowable expenses. I think that's the right word.
Allowable uses, yeah, that's exactly right, Sarah. The only thing I really want to add here is just there's still so much unspent funding out there that we're aware of. We know that it is meant to be flexible. We know that it is meant to address the personalized and individual needs of students, which both mCLASS intervention and Amplify Reading do, like we just saw. And we know that it's also meant to be guided towards students to support learning loss that's happened as a result of COVID. And finally, we know that Amplify Reading and mCLASS intervention are allowable uses and that multi-year licenses are totally allowable under the COVID stimulus funds. So I'll pass it back to Albania for anything with Q&A or anything else.
Thank you so much, Christian and Sarah. I'll pause for a moment if you have any additional questions you may have, or maybe type in the chat something that you found that was super interesting or something back in my teaching days, something that you learned today or something that, really struck a chord with you. And while you're typing, definitely take time to connect with us. You can visit us at amplify.com. We have a link there, and I'll actually drop it in the chat as well, just for convenience purposes. And of course, my neighbors are now mowing the lawn. It's just perfect timing. Hold on one second. All right, dropping this in the chat here for your convenience. And I'll wait a beat in case anybody has any questions or comments or something that you found interesting. In the meantime, Oh, awesome. I'm glad that you found this very informative. I thought it was awesome as well. I'll take a moment right now to talk a little bit about the science of reading before I close this out. It's a fantastic podcast that we have here. Our host, Susan Lambert, engages with well-known literacy experts, researchers, and practitioners to discuss insights, trends, and challenges in literacy education. We're currently wrapping up season 5, and fun fact, we have almost 2 million downloads and counting. So be sure to give it a listen. You won't regret it. It's wonderful, really. And coming from an educator. That's all actually the time we have today. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend it with us. We hope you enjoyed the valuable information shared. I'll go ahead and drop the additional chat resources mentioned for your convenience. But again, thank you and have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much.